When our clinic started prescribing peptides freaking years ago, it felt like a third of the doctors that I talked to that peptides were snake oil. Now it's like they see those same doctors asking,
Hey, Dr. Jones, how do we start peptide protocols for our own patients?
I hear it all the time. The tide really has shifted, but not for the reasons that most people would think. You see, you've got some people swearing that peptides are miracle compounds, I think yours truly, saying nothing else has come close to what they've experienced. Then you've got others calling them the biggest gamble that you could ever take with your own body. It's wild. Both camps are loud, both are convinced, but today, I'm cutting through the noise, the wins, the stories, and the pattern behind every single bad outcome that I've ever seen. Because once you spot it, I think this whole debate is going to look entirely different. I'm Dr. Jones, DC, and I run a nationwide clinic, and I started using peptides on myself long before this was a trend that you'd hear about on social media. And now I work alongside our amazing medical team helping thousands of patients use these compounds the right way. So what I'm about to tell you isn't theory, it's what I've watched up close on real people year after year. So let me show you what peptides actually are, because if you came into this video picturing some sketchy injectable some guy at the gym is pushing, you're missing the bigger picture. You see, peptides are actually just short chains of amino acids. One amino acid gone and it's a completely different compound. In fact, you can have the same amino acids, each of these little circles are amino acids, and you can bend it, although this model doesn't bend, but you can bend it and twist it and all of a sudden it's a completely different compound. Your body already makes thousands of peptides. The ones that we use clinically fall into a few clean buckets. So first up, you got healing and recovery, BPC 157, TB 500, GHK copper, lorazepam, KPV. When I tore up my knee, I went after BPC 157 and TB 500, commonly known as the Wolverine stack, because the people running it report healing that they weren't expecting. Tendons, ligaments, soft tissues, gut lining. The second bucket is metabolic and body composition. MOTS-c tends to be the most talked about peptide in this bucket, sometimes called exercise in the bottle, because in early research, it mimics what training does to your mitochondria, which are like the batteries of your cell. Turns the dial up on energy production. Examples of others would be O304 or Sloop 332. Now, one thing that I'll tell you that almost no one else is going to mention, what I've seen in our patients is that if the body is already beat up from chronic stress, bad sleep, or years of inflammation, MOTS-c can actually add stress rather than help. So you want to repair before you supercharge, and that's why we typically prescribe SS31 first, not all the time, just in certain metabolically challenged patients. You want to stabilize the mitochondrial function and then layer in MOTS-c after. This is the kind of detail that separates someone running these compounds well from someone running them blind. Third bucket, we have anti-aging and neural inflammation. Brain peptides. You have Samorelin, CJC1295, and Ipamorelin on the growth hormone side, and then you have peptides like Epitalin on the longevity side, Cmax and C-Link on the cognitive side, plus a compounded formulation called synapsin that our prescribers prescribe for neurological support. Now, these are the ones that people are using to feel sharper, sleep deeper, and slow down the parts of aging that hit them the hardest. And then the fourth bucket, the ones that you didn't even know were peptides, everybody knows about these, semaglutide, tirzepatide, retatrutide. Every one of these are in the peptide family. And then you have NAD, which is technically a coenzyme, not a peptide, and it lives in the same clinical world. Now, these compounds travel together. So if you've ever taken Ozempic, you know, Ozempic, right? It's semaglutide. If you've ever had an NAD drip, congratulations, you already trust compounds from this space, but you just didn't know it yet, which brings up a question that should be bothering you right now. If this is an entire category, including the compounds that you already use, why don't half of them have major human studies behind them? Okay, so here's the tension point, and it's real. On one side, you've got people who say these compounds gave them their life back, and I see those patients and coach them all the time. People who've tried everything else and couldn't move the needle. People who've watched their parents decline from preventable conditions and decided not to let that happen to them. Now, that side isn't lying. That side isn't a placebo. But then on the other side, you've got legitimate concerns. Headlines about peptide injuries, poison control calls increasing, stories of people running protocols that they had no business running. And that side isn't lying either. And here's what makes this debate a little weird. The exact same people demanding rigorous human trials are often the exact same people pointing out that no one has any reason to fund those trials in the first place. They want the proof, and they already know why the proof doesn't exist. And they're holding two contradictory positions in the same comment thread. And they don't even realize it. So I'm not going to mock that. It's a fair place to be stuck, because the truth is the evidence around peptides doesn't look like the evidence around statins or blood pressure medications. There's a reason for that. And it's not the reason that most people unfortunately think. Now, before I tell you what that reason is, if you've asked the online hive mind a peptide question 3 times now and you still don't have an answer that you trust, what we do is bundle a real prescription through a licensed compounding pharmacy with a medical team that's actually available when those questions come up. You can text the number on the screen or check out the link in the description to book a free discovery call. Okay, now The reason that the evidence around these peptides looks weird has almost nothing to do with the science, and it has everything to do with money. Money, 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 baby. Now, let me walk you through what actually has to happen for a compound to get the kind of evidence that everybody keeps demanding. The full development pipeline to get a drug through the FDA from early lab work through a phase 3 clinical trial can run over $1 billion. You got $1 billion? I don't got $1 billion. And that's not the ceiling. The full development timeline from early lab work to an approval letter on someone's desk runs 10 to 15 years. And by most industry estimates, only 1 in 10 compounds that enter human trials make it all the way through. The other 9 fail somewhere along the way. So put yourself in the shoes of the people deciding whether to fund that trial. Over $1 billion, 15 years, 1 in 10 odds. Are you going to write that check? The only way that math works is if you can patent the compound at the end of it, because the patent is what gives you the exclusive rights to sell it for the next 20 years, make a recoupment on your investment. No patent, no recovery, you ain't gonna get no investment. And here's where peptides hit the wall. The Supreme Court ruled that naturally occurring compounds and small molecules, another type of peptide, I'll leave it at that for now, that exist in nature, you can't patent them. And many of the peptides used clinically are based on sequences that your body already makes. And while some of those can be patented through modifications or novel formulations, the commercial incentives still isn't there for most of them. The margins don't justify the trial, which means even if a pharmaceutical company believed that BPC 157 was the most promising compound that they'd ever seen, they couldn't justify funding the trial. Not because the science is bad, because there's no path to ever get the money back. Isn't that some bullshit that money has such a powerful play into your healthcare? Let me know in the comments what you think about that, because that really pisses me off. Used to it by now, because this isn't the first example of that situation. Now compare that to GLP-1 medications like Ozempic or Mounjaro. A major reason that those peptides got their massive trials is that the molecule, they could patent it. The patent justified the investment. The investment funded the trial. The trial got us the safety data and approval. That's the system working exactly the way that it's designed to work for compounds that fit the model. Peptides like BPC 157, TB 500, MOTC, they don't fit the model. So the model ignores them. Not because they don't work, because no one can profit from proving that they do. Now pause and ask yourself this question. What's the real reason most peptides don't have major human studies? Is it that the science failed, or is it that something else is going on? That's the part that most of the noise online completely misses. The evidence isn't missing because the science failed, it's missing because no one can profit from proving that it worked. And here's the part that nobody talks about. Things are starting to change. In July of 2026, that's around the corner, the FDA's Compounding Advisory Committee is reviewing a short list of peptides, APC 157, Cmax, Epitalin, to be added back to the legitimate prescription pathway. Now that review wouldn't be happening if the data behind these compounds wasn't real. The tide really is turning, but the trials that would shut down the skeptics, those probably will never come. So if I can't point you to a phase 3 trial, how do I know peptides work? Now that's where what I've watched in our clinic comes into play, and many doctors would agree. Real quick, if that reframe just landed, you need to hit that subscribe button right now, because we put out 2 solid peptide videos every single week, and the whole point of this channel is cutting through exactly that kind of noise. Now here's the trap most peptide debates fall into. Both sides assume the only legitimate evidence is a phase 3 randomized controlled trial. And if that doesn't exist, then the data doesn't count. That's not how medicine actually works. Aspirin was used for pain for centuries before anybody ran a freaking trial on willow bark, the active ingredient. Metformin actually came out of folk medicine for diabetes long before it was studied. Clinical observation. Humans watching what works on other humans. The oldest type of evidence based in medicine. It's not a substitute for a controlled trial, of course, but it's not nothing. So let me tell you what I've actually seen. I personally have witnessed thousands of people run peptide protocols under clinical supervision across the healing compounds, the metabolic ones, the growth hormone ones. The side effects that we see tend to be very low, very, very low, and very marginal when sourcing and dosing are dialed in. Though the profile varies by compound, of course, we're not seeing the kinds of long-term adverse events that would normally show up at this scale if these compounds were inherently dangerous to any degree. Cleanest example, AOD 9604, a fat loss peptide. It failed its phase 2 trial on efficacy at the dose tested, but the safety data that came out of that trial showed very favorable safety profile. The trial flopped on results, not on harm. Now, clinically, what we see, the dosing isn't so much the issue, it's the correct implementation. It was never utilized during the trials at that time. When we do it right, paired up with fasting, we see real effects. And that happens often. A compound misses in a trial design and quietly works in real practice. Then there's the validation loop happening in real time. The GLP-1s, semaglutide, tirzepatide, got the massive trials because they were patentable. Tens of thousands of patients followed, cardiovascular benefits confirmed, and early evidence of addiction-related improvements. What those trials confirmed is exactly what clinicians have been seeing for years before the data caught up. The trial validated the observation, not the other way around. The compounds that have gotten rigorous studies have mostly validated what experienced practitioners were already seeing. There's no reason to assume the unpatentable ones are going to break that pattern. Quick question while we're here. If you want me to break down a specific peptide protocol in detail, BPC-157, MOT-C, the GLP-1 stack, NAD, let me know in the comments which compound will be helpful to you, and then that'll make its way into our queue in the upcoming videos. Be sure to include why you want to see it. Now, with all that said, let's be honest about the other side, because you have heard the horror stories, people who got hurt, people who walked away from peptides, telling everyone to stay far away. Some of those stories are real, and we have to talk about what was actually behind them. Now, here's what I've seen happen over and over again, and what every story that I'm about to describe has in common. Every bad outcome that I have ever seen with peptides almost always traces back to one of three things: bad source, bad protocol, no oversight. That's it. It's not the compound as much as it is everything else. It's almost always one of those three things. So let's go through them. Okay, so the first one is source. The gray market is the single biggest reason people get hurt. There are studies now testing peptide samples bought from research chemical sites, and the purity on some of those samples is coming back as low as 7 to 14% compared to what's actually on the label. That means in the worst cases, over 80% of what's in the vial is something else. Filler, contamination, the wrong compound entirely. Poison control calls related to peptide products have surged over the last few years, and nearly every one of those cases is sourcing related. Not the compound failing, the compound never being in the bottle to begin with. Now, the second one is the protocol. Even when the compound is real and clean, legitimate peptides, people get themselves into trouble by running it wrong, stacking 4 to 5 things at once without understanding the interactions, skipping cycles when cycling matters, layering powerful metabolic compounds onto a body that hasn't done the basic work yet, meaning sleep is broken, blood sugar is uncontrolled, nutrition is a wreck. We call it the foundation first principle for a reason. Powerful tools amplify what you bring to them. If you bring a stable, well-resourced body, peptides amplify recovery. If you bring a stressed out, underslept, malnourished body, those same peptides can accomplish nothing in some cases. And the third one is oversight. This is the quiet one. Somebody buys a research vial, copies a Reddit protocol, never gets baseline blood work, never checks anything along the way, and then 6 months later, bam, something is off and they have nobody to call. No labs to compare it to, no clinician who knows their history. That's where the worst outcomes happen. Not from the compound, but from running it alone in the dark. Now, quick check before we move on here. Out of those three, which one do you think is responsible for the biggest share of peptide horror stories? The source, the protocol, the oversight? Drop your answer in the comments, because every story you have ever heard about somebody getting hurt with peptides, pull on the thread and one of those three will be at the other end. Every time, most times. Notice what's on that list, the compound, because the compound was never the problem. So if every negative story that you've heard traces back to one of those three things, doing this the right way is the inverse. Now, there's 3 rules: right source, right protocol, right oversight. And if you got those 3 in place, you're working with these compounds the way that they're supposed to be worked with. Okay, so rule 1, the peptides you put into your body need to come from a licensed 503A compounding pharmacy. That's a regulated prescription pathway. The pharmacy operates under state and federal oversight. The products go through quality control, and what's in the bottle is supposed to match what's on the label. It's a different universe from a research chemical site. Now, that single decision eliminates the largest category of harm that we ever see by a wide margin. If your peptides are coming from a research chemical site, a Telegram group, or some guy at the gym, you've already failed rule number 1. Nothing else you do will likely matter. And look, if you're going to go the research route anyways, because I respect people in certain situations, financially speaking is the biggest one, and you can't afford prescription peptides, I get it. At the absolute minimum, you need to send your peptides out to an independent lab and get them tested before you put them into your body. To me, that's the floor. Not the ceiling, the floor. Okay, rule number 2. This is where foundation first comes into play. Peptides amplify whatever they meet. So if your body is well-rested, fed, hormonally balanced, metabolically stable, peptides amplify recovery and performance. But if the body is sleep-deprived, malnourished, inflamed, it's a hormonal wreck, then those same peptides have very little to work with. You don't put high-octane fuel into an engine that needs a freaking oil change, right? You fix the engine, you get the fresh oil in there. That means sleep, blood sugar management, basic nutrition, hormonal balance, sleep optimization, the unsexy stuff, handled before the optimization stack ever shows up. And once it does show up, the dosing has to match the goal. The stacking order has to make sense, and the cycles have to happen when the cycles are warranted. That's protocol management. Rule 3, oversight. This is the one that most people skip, and it's the one that matters the most over the long run. Baseline blood work before you start anything. Ongoing labs at sensible intervals. Quarterly, sometimes more often depending on the stack. And someone clinically in the loop who actually knows your history and can read those labs in context. Not a forum thread, not an AI chat, an actual human who's being responsible for your care. That's the oversight piece. You get those 3 rules right, and the picture shifts completely. The same compound that hurts somebody running it from a sketchy source with no labs is the same compound that genuinely changes someone else's life when it's coming from a real pharmacy layered onto a stable foundation and monitored along the way. The compound didn't change, most likely. Everything around it did, though. So, miracle drug or risky gamble? The honest answer is neither. In both, these compounds are not magic. They're not going to fix a broken life. They're not a workaround for sleep, food, movement, or the things that you already know you should be doing. But for the right person, sourced right, protocoled right, monitored correctly, I think they're the most powerful tools modern medicine has access to right now. And I've seen people recover from injuries that orthopedic surgeons said it's a no-go. You're just not going to heal from that. I've seen people pull metabolic markers back into range that their doctors said that they would only get worse. And I've seen quality of life come back to people who had given up on getting it back. It's not what you're using, it's how, and that's the whole answer. If you've gotten this far into the video and what you're sitting with is, I want to try these compounds, Dr. Jones, but I'm not going to roll the dice on a vial from a research site, and I want somebody clinically in the loop, here's what we've built for that exact situations. Again, what we do is my doctors prescribe peptides through our 503A pharmacy. You get a medical team that's actually reachable when questions come up. A lot of clinics in this space ship the prescription, and that's it. No phone call. No one to text when something feels off in week number 3. That's not how we work. Guys, text number on the screen or check out the link in the description if you want to book a free discovery call. You'll get a chance to talk with one of our patient educators who are going to walk through what you're trying to do and get a read on whether it's a right fit and explain how the intake call with the medical team actually works. Our medical team can design a protocol for you. They're going to talk program design and give you an idea of potentially what peptides might be able to be a solution for you before our medical team gets involved. Now, quick note before you book, this is for people who want their prescription through our 503A pharmacy sources. If you already have peptides from somewhere else and you're looking for clinical support on those peptides, that's not what we offer. And one more thing, if peptides are on your radar because you're really trying to solve a stubborn weight loss problem at its root cause and you want coaching that helps you go deeper than just peptides alone, we do that too as well. That's actually our bread and butter. Text the same number either way. Now, if you're walking away from this thinking, okay, framework aside, which compounds actually deserve my attention right now, then check out that video right there, Top Peptides for 2026. We'll see you guys later.